Welcome to Rom Wills, Money Matters. Learn from your business mistakes. Learn from your business mistakes. And I'm quite sure I've probably talked about this before, but this is something very important because let's be real, when we're talking about any business, well, most businesses, if we talk about businesses in general, most businesses actually fail. Most businesses actually fail in their first year. Seriously, there's a lot of people who register a business and they'll get out there and do something. It can even be an employee firm. It can be an employee firm, but then all of a sudden they do a bunch of dumb stuff. Well, no, I ain't gonna say dumb stuff. Let me retract that. They'll make some mistakes. And yeah, in some occasions, just some dumb stuff. But they'll just make in general some mistakes or something. It might be they set up in the wrong place. They didn't do their due diligence. They didn't have the right product for their demographic. They might not have advertised properly, anything of that nature. And yeah, in some cases, just some dumb stuff. But even that's some people. Some people, they'll do everything and still make some mistakes. And and it's like, or they didn't, it could have been anything, right? Here's the thing. Whether you made a mistake because you just did some dumb stuff, or you just made a legitimate mistake. You thought you did everything right, but you might have been in the wrong location, might not have advertised properly. Whatever the case, learn from it. Learn from those mistakes. Because regardless of how the mistake happened, regardless of how, look at it as a learning experience. Because that's why a lot of businesses fail. For whatever reason, a mistake was made, but they didn't learn from it. Then they're out of business. And I've seen plenty of businesses, plenty of people get started in business, but they didn't learn from it. I've been there. I've been there. And I didn't really think about it, or I didn't know what I was doing for a couple things. And it is what it is. But you don't get mad, especially if it's something that you really want to do. Now, if it's a business, now one mistake a lot of people make, they just get into the wrong thing. Okay, learn from that. Maybe that wasn't for you. Some people get into something and they don't have an aptitude for it. They don't have a real love for it, talent for it, anything. It's just not them. That's the biggest thing. Learn from that. Learn is like, this ain't for me. This ain't the type of thing I want to get into. But then even with the stuff you want to get into, you want to do, you can make mistakes. But it's like I always say, success is not a straight line. Success is, and I will say that again and again and again, it's not a straight line. Yeah, it's a squiggly ball. But when you fall into those holes or you run into that wall, what you got to learn from it, you got to say, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't do it this way. Maybe I need to do it another way. Maybe I really need to really look into my demographic. I need to think about where I'm setting up. It's like Ray Kroc, who's known for getting McDonald's out there. He said he's not in the restaurant business. He said he's in the real estate business. One of the things he did was just put them in the right places. And that let me focus on that. If you have a brick and mortar business, you have to really think about where you're going. I remember talking with a bookstore owner back in the day. He said, if you're going to put a bookstore in a mall, walk that mall at different times. Like when I first moved to this area, I was thinking about a kiosk selling books. And I walked to my local mall. I said, nah, they probably wouldn't get the books I would buy, I would sell. Right? And plus there was a bookstore there already. All right. So I didn't make that mistake. I didn't put money into some kiosk right there. Now somebody else might have just did it anyway. And I was like, nah, you got to think about that. Whenever I'm like, because I've said before, I walk through a lot of malls. I'm not always looking for just, different stores. I'm paying attention to everything because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking business, you know? Now, even though I'm doing this now, I'm still keep my eye out for business opportunities and everything. And I have some connections with some wholesale places if I want to do whatever type of business. So I'm thinking about that. If I'm going through flea markets or something like that, I'm looking at the people, I'm looking at the location, everything. I'm thinking about that. It's just automatic. I'm always looking around. But a big mistake people make is just putting it in the wrong location. And then even if you're doing an online business, okay, you can do online. That's very popular. How are you advertising? How's people supposed to know you there anyway? You know? Are you on some type of social media where you can buy ads? Now, a lot of ads I get when I'm on IG, I'm getting it from like clothing stores or one time, it is interesting. I was looking up like barbershops that were franchising online. But then when I got on IG just for relaxation, I got all these barbershop ads. I was like, oh, okay. Like you got to think. Like that could be a mistake. You're not advertising your business. It's one thing to have the business, but especially if you're online, you got to let people know. You got to get people to your site, you know? You got to think about what you're doing. And indeed, I've known some people, even if you hire somebody to market for you, like let me use that for an example. Because I remember on one of my numerous jobs, this website had hired this young man to market for them. He ain't do jack. He did not do jack. Giving out some flyers or something, that's not good enough. You got to think about who you trying to get to, where they're going to be at, whatever the case. But you learn from any mistake, anything that you're not doing, and you sit back and you say, oh, okay, I did this, it didn't work. All right, one, you learn most basic thing you learn is it didn't work. So it's like, all right, maybe you need to go to this location. Maybe you need to do this or that, Maybe you need to talk to a mentor or, you need to look up some stuff. Maybe you might need to pay a company that's really talking about demographics. Like I said, with some big companies, they'll pay 5 figures for some information just about the demographics of an area. Whenever I see like a big grocery store or a big store putting themselves in the area, I already know they looked into it. But whatever the case, and most of the people watching this channel, they starting off small. Think about it. Learn from any mistakes you make. Anything that you're not making money or is not going well, don't look at that as a failure. Look at that more as a learning experience. Whether it's just a legitimate mistake, whether you just made a dumb move, whatever the case, learn from it, all right? So anyway, that's all I have for today. Yeah, I know the deal. Let's go make that money.